part 10 isn't, and preface, isn't that quite a confusing statement? Earlier this morning, I ran across information that came in front of me many months ago. And it was at a crush of time when I had so much stuff that was coming down to identify that I probably printed it off, but I've got a mountain of stuff behind me here that I don't have time to look through it. And it's from a lot of different things. This project of mine and other interests, but I think I finally put this together. And the reason why I have part 10 and preface is after doing 9, well, then I find this should probably be in the beginning. But so let's just kind of go over something here, and most of this is written stuff, and I'm going to try to get through it. But basically in 1945, again, Harry Truman writes to the Captain Walter Farmer ahead of the Wiesbaden collection point for the Nazi plunder. And the directive that Truman gave to Wiesbaden leaders there was, and I aim to prove that this is the biggest lie that's ever been perpetrated, to the tune of tremendous amounts of money. And the story is that Truman asked for 202 paintings to be sent from the Monuments Men to the United States. That's the biggest lie there is out there, and I aim to prove it, hopefully, in the next few minutes by the information that's just staring me in the face. But it comes in several parts, and I have to try to put together for you. And that is, Truman makes this directive to the Wiesbaden collection point, where the leader here is Captain Farmer, and he and another one of his colleagues, top colleagues, wrote a response. And it says here, basically, the Wiesbaden Manifesto is a document written and signed by the members of the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives organization, rejecting the plundering and removal of cultural items as spoils of war. Now, wait a minute. Farmer and his men are saying that they're rejecting the plundering and removal of cultural items as spoils of war. Now, it says here, and history has it written, that there's only 202 paintings. Now, how do you get rejecting the plundering and removal of cultural items as spoils of war? Now, where does plundering come in? I'm going to explain all that to you. That's exactly what happened. It's all right here. Please give me the time to share that with you. Here's some interesting things too. I'll just try to get through this as eloquently as I can. In the summer of 1945, Captain Farmer became the collecting point's first director. The first shipment of artworks arriving at Wiesbaden included cases of antiquities, Egyptian art, that's all what this is about, mostly, Islamic artifacts and paintings from the Kaiser Friedrich Museum. The collecting point also received materials from the Reichsbank, and Nazi-looted Polish liturgical collections. Boy, isn't that a mouthful. At its height, Wiesbaden stored, identified, and restituted approximately 700,000 individual objects, including paintings and sculptures. The collecting point not only cataloged and restituted items, but also kept them away from the Soviet army in wartime reparations. You know, the Soviets already know that their crown jewels are missing. They already know that, obviously, I would think. His superiors, that's getting it back to Farmer, his superiors ordered that he send to the U.S. 202 German-owned paintings in his custody. Captain Farmer and 35 others that were in charge of the Wiesbaden collection point gathered to draw up what has become known as the Wiesbaden Manifesto on November 7th, 1945, declaring, "We wish to state that from our own knowledge no historical grievance will wrangle so long or be the cause of so much justified bitterness as a removal for any reason of a part of the heritage of any nation, even if that heritage may be interpreted as a prize of war." Among the co-signers was Lieutenant Charles Percy Parkhurst, U.S. Navy. And also in this article here, one of the wiki sites, but this is the way history still is written today. The next sentence. After 3 years of debate, U.S. President Harry S. Truman ordered that the paintings be returned to Germany in 1948. Well, just recently I've heard that Truman wasn't that well liked of an individual, and history has been rewritten around him. And my last thing is, if only 202 paintings were sent to the United States, why is there thousands of artwork now found without provenance in the United States and North America? Okay, here goes, moving on here. This is from that wiki article I looked up. I think it was footnote number 40. And number 40 is a newspaper article, I believe, or online article from a source, Art Sleuths on Nazi Trail, Winnipeg Free Press. Please follow me. This gets real good. I wanted to do this for months. It got away from me. Here it is. When the Germans invaded the countries of Europe, they raided museums, art galleries, libraries, and research institutes, stealing works of art, books, religious objects, coins, metal collections, anything of value. France and Italy were particularly affected by the greatest theft in European history, but so was the Soviet Union, with over 173 museums raided. Imagine the Russians had to be chomping at the bit. They want to get their stuff back. Stuff that I had in my hands. Eventually we got. There. The collections were first picked over by Nazi leaders Hermann Goering and Adolf Hitler for their own private use. Then the remainder was transported back to Germany. The most valuable items, mostly paintings and sculptures, were held in salt mines and caves so as to be protected from aerial bombardment. Okay, this is all part of the Monuments Men movie. Chatterley said the haul included works by Matisse, Degas, Botticelli, Raphael, and marble sculptured by Donatello and Michelangelo. She said stolen artworks are still being found, citing a case about 2 years ago where more than 1,400 pieces were discovered in a Munich apartment. We all remember that, don't we? The apartment owner's father had worked for the Nazis, trading in their stolen artwork. Chatterley said it's not unusual for major art galleries to have art with provenance voids during the war years. Are you ready for this? If you've been following all my videos, next line. I'll say that again. It is not unusual for major art galleries to have art with provenance voids during the war years. That includes the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., with more than 400 works without provenance. The Art Institute of Chicago, with more than 500. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, with 393. Now here's my question. What about all the items that have a fake provenance? Is that included in these numbers? Probably not, because that's what this is all about. I've already covered that with you in the previous videos, that we had stuff that is credited to Lord Carnarvon and the Fletcher Fund back around in the after the turn of the century into the 20th century, around the 1920s, give or take a couple of years. All right. Now we're going to go on from here. And Farmer, this is head of Wiesbaden. And I'm taking this from Miami's own, this is Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. And the title of this article, Miami's Own Monuments Man Leaves Legacy with Art Museum. This is part of it. His organizational skills and attention to detail caught the attention of his supervisors, and after only 2 months, Farmer was in charge of the Wiesbaden collecting point, said Robert Wicks, director of the Art Museum. As a trained architect and interior designer, he had a good eye. That eye and his love for art stayed with him after the war, and he soon became an instrumental in planting the seeds for art museums in Ohio and Texas. I think we all remember that Josephine's Tiara is in Texas. By the early 1970s, Farmer owned an eclectic collection of art that he offered to Miami University. Extensive holdings included Roman and Greek artifacts and pre-Columbian ceramics, and became the foundation for Miami Museum. Well, I have some information I haven't even got to you yet, and we're going to cover that. It's in these few pages. Generously, he provided us with his collection, but his stipulation was that we build an art museum to display them. In 1978, Miami opened the Art Museum, which today frequently displays pieces from Farmer's vast collections. One particular is a favorite of Wicks. It's a remarkable vase. It's a hydra from ancient Greece, dated to the middle of the 6th century before Christ existed, is one of the gems from the Farmer collection, currently on display in our galleries. Wonderful example of the black figure tradition, and one of the few such in the United States, attributed to the artist Leidos. And this is dated February 4th this year, 2014, from the Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Now this is what I was saying some time ago about all the artifacts and basically only 202 paintings from the Wiesbaden collection point and the other two collection points. This is where all the lies have been covered up, and I'm about to bring those forward. This is under art repatriation. Arguments against repatriation and arguments for repatriation. This is a feeling in the day, and it's still going on today. It just takes more litigation for people to get their stuff back. The stuff is worth so much, the museums that have it, 9/10 of the law, possession, seems to work everywhere. But let's read on here. Artifacts are part of a universal human history, and encyclopedic museums like the British Museum, the Louvre, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art cultivate the dissemination of knowledge, tolerance, and broad cultural understanding. This is one of the arguments against repatriation, against giving it back to the people that originally had it, their stuff. Another argument against repatriation. Arguments were frequently excavated or uncovered by looters who brought to light a piece of artwork that would otherwise never have been seen. Foreign-led excavation teams have uncovered items that contribute to the cultural knowledge and understanding. Next. Nationalist, retentionist, cultural property laws claiming ownership are founded on constructed boundaries of modern nations with weak connections to the culture, spirit, and race to the ancient people who produced these antiquities. Cultural identities are dynamic, interrelaced, and overlapping, so no modern nation-state can claim cultural property as their own, or else they are promoting a sectarian view of culture. Just reading it. Having artwork disseminated around the world encourages international, scholarly, and professional exchange. Encyclopedic museums are located in cosmopolitan cities such as London, Paris, and New York, and if the artworks were to be moved, they would be seen by far fewer people. Arguments for repatriation. Encyclopedic museums such as the British Museum, the Louvre, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, established as repositories for looted art during imperial and colonial rule, and thus are located in metropolitan cities out of view and reach of the cultures from which they were appropriated. Well, we know that for a fact, don't we? There's a lot of reliquies I haven't even covered yet. There must be a dozen or so. Anyway, moving on here. Precedents of repatriated art have already been set in many cases, but the artworks that museums currently refuse to repatriate are the most valuable and famous artworks. Well, here we go. Foreign-led excavations have justified colonial rule. In the pursuit of obtaining knowledge about the artifacts, there was a need to establish control over the artifacts and the countries where they were located. The argument that art is a part of a universal human history is a derivative of colonial discourse that appropriated ancient art of other cultures into Western historical narrative. You may remember me saying something about this way earlier. Well, this is where I got it from. Just remembered bits and pieces. Couldn't put it into words. I can hardly even say half these words. The encyclopedic museums that house much of the world's artworks and artifacts are located in Western cities and privilege European scholars, professionals, and people. The argument that artwork will not be protected outside of the Western world is hypocritical as much as the artwork transported out of colonialized countries was crudely removed and damaged and sometimes lost in transportation. The Elgin marbles, for example, were also damaged during the cleaning and preservation process. Art is best appreciated and understood in its original historical and cultural context. Art taken out of the country as a spoils of war, looting, imperialism, and colonialism is unethical, even if it isn't reflected in legislation. The possession of artwork taken under these conditions is a form of continued colonialism. The lack of existing legal recourse for claiming the return of illicitly appropriated cultural property is a result of colonization. Cultural property is a symbol of cultural heritage and identity, and the appropriation of historical artworks is an affront to a nation's pride. Now here's the other thing I wanted to go a little bit further, and it goes into, it talks about repatriation of the Rosetta Stone. Egypt is seeking the repatriation of the Rosetta Stone from the British Museum and Nefertiti bust from the News Museum in Berlin. And it goes on, it says about Greece here. But the other thing I want to say is on this page, Nefertiti and was called a Euphroneos crater, which used to be at the Metropolitan. I'll get to that in a second. Now here's India. The United Kingdom has rejected India's fresh demand to return its priceless artifacts like the Koh-i-Noor diamond and the Sultangiri Buddha that were stolen, looted, smuggled during British colonial rule, citing a law, the British Museum Act 1963, that prevents it from giving back the items. Archaeological Survey of India is planning to join a campaign with the support of UNESCO and other countries to regain the artifacts. And it says here in South Korea, in November 2010, Japan agreed to return some 1,000 cultural objects to South Korea that were plundered during its colonial occupation from 1910 through 1945. The collection includes a collection of royal books from the Jeswan dynasty, 1392-1910. Okay. Let's get back to the Euphroneos crater. Right below Nefertiti there. This is a letter that I wrote December 21st, 2013. Hello, Dr. Ann Blair Brownlee. My name is Jack Herman, and I live here in Pennsylvania. 35 years ago, your predecessor, Dr. Fred Mattson, was confronted by me with a quest for answers about an experience I had with a lot of ancient artifacts that were brought back from World War II. I was born late in 1947. My experience started about 1956 when I lived in Los Angeles. Two of the several items, I believe, were these craters. That's one. There's another one that's distinguishable. Maybe I'll find it and I'll put these up. Matter of fact, I'll just do that right now so you get a good look at it. The two craters. The first one, not the one that we saw before. Look where he's pointing. All right, this is the second one. See how the blood is coming off on a wrong angle of where he's laying? This is a point I wanted to make when I was a kid. Forgive me, I have a malfunction here, and the narrative on the two was called craters. Back in the Greek day, a crater was a vessel that held wine, and they would add water to the wine to take it to the distance and whatever. But the first one there, I wanted you to notice where the one image was pointing to the other one's genitals. When I was a little kid and my brother, when we saw this, I mean, back in those days, that was pornography. Trying to understand that, all we could do was laugh at that. The second one, if you want to go back and look at it, if you look at the way the blood is dripping away from the wounds of the person that they're carrying, it's not falling directly down. It's coming back down on an angle. And I studied that for the longest time, trying to understand that. And the other thing that's significant about these craters, the way that the handles are designed, if you hold that wrong, the lip, the outer lip, cuts deeply into your knuckles, and they're heavy. They're probably about 3 to 5 pounds. I remember that because trying not to break them. I think we may have even broken one. Not either one of these two, but a third one. But nevertheless, I'm pretty damn sure we had both of these because of things I remember about them. The way that blood's coming off there, and then the other one where he's pointing. Why do I remember those significant things? We had these. Anyway. Let's see where I'm at. Getting back to the line that I left off, these items surfaced after I discovered recently the direction of one of my quests, which includes most items from Thutmose III, 1479, 1425 before Christ. I have in my possession 6 months' correspondence with Dr. Klaus Goldman, curator of the Museum of Egyptian Antiquities from 1978, and my association with them from Priam's Gold, the Troy Treasure. I hold knowledge of the molecular breakdown of these artifacts, which are quite different than those of Thutmose III, which was in an airtight tomb. That's a whole other story there. All the artifacts were deceptively taken now by an estranged extension of the family from the garage where they were stored in Los Angeles. A lot of lies created and an unbelievable amount of money exchanged back in the day. I since agree that Thutmose III, the Troy civilization pieces, which were gold, and Nefertiti were taken before anybody else, any of the adults in the family knew they were gone. But the Romanov stuff, which was extensive, and the German crates, well, that's a whole different story there. I'm talking about stuff that was in a sea bag. And most all people connected to the story of past. I have but 20 years left to get out the truth of what actually took place. The sad part of this history is a lot of income could be generated with the truth and extended provenance of these treasures. It's a win-win situation for everybody. People would flock to the museums and take another look at these artifacts with a different light. I left a trail on a lot of artifacts. I know a lot of secrets of individual pieces. I love what you do, but unfortunately I've found many mistakes that museums have come to believe is the truth. I was told that museums do this to acquire artifacts to fill their voids. This was told to me by an individual before Friday last. I don't want to name any names, get anybody in trouble. She is now in Germany exploring some of the information I've given her. Now we're talking about Dorothy Schneider, who's not anybody at the Metropolitan I had communication with and verbal contact with. Recently I've discovered one of the biggest lies perpetrated by the German Museum. There has been so many theories and deceptions about this particular artifact, and no one cares to hear what I have to say about the authoritative, about it in the authoritative community. The actual fact is, this part of my experience is as scary as hell, to say the least. If I could share my story with my facts for a little advice from you, I believe we would both be richer for the experience. Wishing you and yours a terrific Christmas season. Because of young careers blossoming, we will be having our Christmas with some members of our family today. And I was talking about Nefertiti. I was kind of waiting for her to respond to me, and I could share with her Nefertiti. You know, just saying Nefertiti is bad enough that you know, most people shut down right there. And that was there was another element there. Oh, that was the Monymusk reliquary. And I said I could draw the back end of that rosette, that little disc. I figured all they had to do was reply to me, and I would send them. I wanted them to reply to me rather than offering that image. And they didn't even do that. But anyway, we're well into that half hour. Hopefully, with this failure that I've had in my system here, that all this is recording, and this will be good to go. I'll review it. Be sure to turn your volume down, and thanks for your time.